you. Your Excellency, sir, ladies and gentlemen, may we take our seats. Your Excellency, sir, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, all members of the diplomatic corps led by our ambassadors with representation from France, Japan, Turkey, UAE, and also other parts of Japan, Germany. We have representation from Portugal, Your Excellency. A majority of them will also be joining us virtually, including Korea, Hungary, Denmark, the US, and we also have Portugal. Your Excellency, sir, in attendance as well are cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries from various ministries, Excellency governors, agencies, as well as development partners and private sector stakeholders. Your Excellency, sir, we're delighted to have you here to lead us in conversation in this meeting to review emergency responses, actions relating to the ongoing flood situation in the country. Without further ado, and if you permit me, Your Excellency, sir, I wish to call upon Madam Wanjiko Wakogi, who is the Chief of Staff in your office, sir, to lead us through this first part of the program. Welcome, Madam.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Your Excellencies, Governors present, Cabinet Secretaries present, our Principal Secretaries, led by P.S. Omolo, who has just joined us, and who was about to give his apologies that he's running late, and thank you so much for joining us just in time. Distinguished development partners, private sector representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My singular task is to welcome you to this consultative meeting to review the emergency response actions relating to the ongoing flood situation in Kenya. Your Excellency, this is a follow-up meeting following the call by His Excellency the President for your office to coordinate private sector actors, development partners, and any other well-wishers who would wish to contribute to this cause. We also want to take advantage of this opportunity to just establish where we are at following the first meeting that you convened us with last week, in which we were able to then organize our key actors in national government, as well as some development partners who are present on a joined-up mitigation plan following a whole-of-society approach. Your Excellency, without much further ado, I do want to invite P.S. Omolo to just take us through the next series of engagements, hoping he has caught his breath, and then he will be able to take us through the consultations. Thank you, Your Excellency. P.S. Omolo.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, the Cabinet Secretaries, PS colleagues, the governors present, all our development partners and friends, good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. Excellency, my apologies for walking in late into the meeting. I got a bit stuck. And so that then we save on time, it will be good that first to appreciate the partnership that we have with all our development partners, and to appreciate the leadership of His Excellency, the Deputy President, who has been able to convene us not just today, but on a number of occasions whenever we've had challenges as a country. And now that we are facing extended rainfall across the country with flooding, which is unprecedented in many ways, we are all in agreement that we need to better coordinate, because there's been a lot of engagements, particularly from the development partners, asking on how best they can be able to support in the process. And a number of partners have already done that in many ways, and we do not take it for granted. And by His Excellency, the Deputy President, convening us here, we are looking forward to having a much more better coordination in our response. And also, it presents us with an opportunity to be forward-looking so that then we are not caught up the way we've been caught up in the most recent past. Something that then will be much more organic going forward. Without saying much, allow me to just take us through the next session as captured within the program that is before you, and would want to be very, very brief for those who would make their presentations. So first is that from the Meteorological Department, who are the custodians of the information around the weather and how the situation is looking like going forward for purposes of better presentation. And then we would listen briefly just in terms of what interventions we've been able to undertake so far under the framework of the coordination that is being headed by our team at the National Disaster Operations Center. And then we'll listen to just a few interventions, one coming from the Council of Governors, and then the national government, and then on behalf of our development partners, the UN resident coordinator who will make a few remarks, and then we will close it up with our colleagues from the private sector. So in that particular fashion, the Kenya Meteorological Department, if the DG is here, just brief highlights, because we've been in this space and we all know what's going on. Thank you. Karibu.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, Cabinet Secretaries present, Principal Secretary, slide shows. I'll mainly be talking about where the forecast for the next 7 days, beginning tomorrow. Since I've been asked to be brief, I will not go into the discussion on April, and I'm glad we've passed that slide. We expect rainfall to continue over several parts of the country in this next 7 days. Heavy rainfall events are likely to occur in some parts of the highlands east and west of the Rift Valley, the Lake Victoria Basin, and the Rift Valley during the first half of the forecast period. What we expect in the next half is that there will be reduced rainfall and not as intense. And that's what we are saying, that rainfall intensities across the country are likely to reduce during the second half of the forecast period. Daytime temperatures, that is what we refer to as maximum temperatures, are likely to be more than 30 degrees in some parts, especially the coast, northeastern and northwestern parts of Kenya. Average nighttime temperature, which we refer to as minimum temperatures, will be low, and that is over some parts of the east of the Rift Valley, including Nairobi. Going to the specific forecast, the region over the highlands west of the Rift Valley, where we have the counties of Kisii, Nyamira, since you can read for yourselves, it's those ones in the brackets. The highlands west of the Rift Valley, the Lake Victoria Basin, and the Rift Valley. We expect morning rains over a few places during the first half of the forecast period. Afternoon and night showers are expected, and this will be over several places, almost a widespread situation during the first half of the forecast period. And we expect a reduction in that level of activity thereafter. The northwestern parts of Kenya, where we find Turkana and Samburu counties, we expect that there will be morning rains as well as afternoon and night showers and thunderstorms. This will have a coverage of like a third of the place. That is what we mean by a few places, and that is during the first half of the forecast period. We expect that in the other half, there will be mainly sunny intervals. The highlands east of the Rift Valley, including Nairobi County, where we have Nyandarua, Laikipia, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, all the way as listed. We expect morning rains over a few places during the first half. We expect afternoon and night showers and thunderstorms over several places during the first half, and this will reduce in coverage as we move towards the end of the 7 days. The northeastern parts of Kenya, where we have Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, and Isiolo counties, we expect morning rains, as well as afternoon, night showers, and thunderstorms during the first half of the forecast period. The southeastern lowlands, Machakos, Kitui, Makueni, Kajiado, and Taita Taveta counties, and Taita Taveta is only parts of it. We expect morning rains, as well as afternoon and night showers and thunderstorms over a few places during that first half of that period. Finally, the coast, we have morning and afternoon and night showers over a few places. This will occasionally spread to cover several places, and this is expected to peak as the month progresses. I had intended to end there because it was mainly to discuss the 7 days, but no harm mentioning what we expect for the rest of the month. And that whole zone that we refer to as the Western Lake Victoria Basin and all of those counties, we expect rainfall throughout the month, even though there may be breaks. The total amounts of rainfall are likely to be above average for that season, and we expect occasional storms. And when we talk about storms, we are not necessarily talking about thunderstorms. We are talking about rainfall that falls suddenly, and the coverage may be over a small area, but intense enough to cause damage. Northwestern parts, we expect occasional rainfall during the month, and the amounts are likely to be above average. The highlands east, which includes Nairobi, we expect rainfall throughout the month, and the intensity, this is picked from the forecast that we gave last week, and that is where we are referring to the intensity in the first week, which is, as we witnessed, the total amounts are likely to be above average, and we expect occasional storms. Next slide, please, which should be my last. The northeastern region, we are expecting occasional rainfall during the month, and the amounts are likely to be near to above average. Southeastern lowlands, we expect that the amounts will be near to above average and may be fairly distributed throughout the month. Finally, the coast, the total amounts of rainfall expected in the month are likely to be near to above average. Occasional storms also likely, and it's important to note that May marks the peak of the long rains at the coast, and therefore we expect that the season may extend into the first half of June in that particular region. And we will continue to provide updates as we continue monitoring the situation. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Director, for sharing with us that forecast, not just for the next 7 days, but also an outlook of how things seem to be panning out over the next month. Now, allow me to invite the team that is in charge of coordinating the multi-agency efforts. That's the team led by the Brigadier at the National Disaster Operations Center, together with the Kenya Red Cross Society, just to give us a highlight of what some of the interventions have been taken and how things look like. And then at the same time, also to share with us what is forecasted in terms of the needs assessment across the country based on what we have gone through so far, as well as what we foresee in the coming weeks. So, SG, you can come. So you'll share your time with the head of the NDOC. Yeah. Okay.
We have agreed to start with the Kenya Red Cross presentation first. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to make this presentation as part of the team under the National Disaster Operations Center and not as an independent presentation of the institution. And I'm going to start by highlighting the situation from a weather forecast you've been given. So I'll use a few images for us to understand the situation we are dealing with from a humanitarian perspective. If you look at this photo here, this is what ordinarily we know as the Tana River. Anything in blue is the ordinary course of the river, and the extended river from the flooding can be seen to the parts that are in red. That is huge area that is currently underwater in the entire of the Tana Belt. That is to show how widespread the situation is. This second picture, Your Excellency, is showing the numbers we're registering from an internal displacement perspective. On the first part of the photo, those are the designated displacement sites in Garissa. And on the second photo, you can see as of 30th April, the spaces are completely full. That shows the number of families that are affected by the current disaster. Your Excellency, again, this for purposes of comparison is the entry point to Garissa town, which shows an entire area cut off, including the road leading to Garissa and the wider northeastern. And as you can see, Your Excellency, entire settlements and towns are completely underwater from that image. So what is the humanitarian situation looking like? And I'm going to do a mix of what it will likely look like in the long run if we don't do something about it and what we currently have. So the total number of households that are displaced is increasing in number. This figure is what we currently have on record for the Kenya Red Cross, and it is going to be revised today after the release from the statement under the NDOC framework. But what we need to look at, Your Excellency, is what the number of infrastructure, water infrastructure that is completely destroyed, up to in excess of 1,300 water points completely destroyed, meaning large population are not accessing clean water at the moment. We are estimating that in excess of 37 acreage of crop that is destroyed, meaning from a food security perspective, it is an area that we have to pay attention to, not just in the current emergency, but what it means in terms of access to food. Area that we have largely subsistence farming, but also in terms of the health facilities destroyed, it means access to health care is compromised. So the displacement camps have not followed the normal course of displacement that we ordinarily used to. So normally it is the coast region because of Tana River that is at the peak, followed by northeastern, followed by the other parts, including West Kenya. Currently, we have Nairobi among the highest persons that are displaced, which makes the humanitarian operation very complex. Humanitarian operation in urban spaces by nature are just difficult to undertake. These numbers are likely to change because right now we're experiencing the highest level of flooding in the Western Belt, and from the meteorological focus, it means our next area of focus in terms of operation displacement in numbers is on the Western Belt, the Nzoia River Basin area and the Lake Victoria Basin. What are the current interventions and where is the highest needs? Your Excellency will know that our biggest response in terms of the National Disaster Operation Coordinating Team has been on search and rescue and on safety of people being moved to higher ground. That has taken a bit of our time on search and rescue, and that is coming on really well in terms of the coordination, and we really appreciate the effort that has been put on that coordination. We are also focusing on providing shelter and coordinating emergency shelter for the displaced persons, both as groups and individual families. So at the moment, our biggest effort as a coordinating mechanism is to get where is required the shelter material. And we have enough provision on the ground as of today to provide shelter. The question will be in the coming weeks as the numbers increase, what will that look like? We're also providing water sanitation and access to health care in the displaced population. Generally, Your Excellency, we are still in an emergency operation period. We will have to plan for what the recovery will look like in the long run, and the needs are likely to grow from there. So I pass over to General Kaimo. Thank you.
Permission to carry on, sir. Thank you, sir. Your Excellency, the Deputy President, sir, allow me to ride on the protocol already established in the interest of time. And this is a presentation from the National Disaster Operations Center to this committee. Allow me to dispense of the preliminaries and go straight to the gist of the presentation. Sir, following the weather forecast, which is the main driver of the whole issue, there are a number of, having in mind the data from the weather, these are the implications, or rather what we see as the implications for the ongoing rains. We see a bit of flooding in low-lying areas, floodplains, as well as urban areas with poor drainage, landslides and mudslides where there are steep slopes, and strong winds and thunder and lightning, as well as large waves. And this is what is going to really impact or inform the actions we will take. So we are not also losing sight of the dams. These had been mentioned in passing. The Seven Forks Dam are already overflowing. But what is encouraging is the dams are safe. It's only the spillage which is causing the flooding. But the integrity or structural integrity of the dams is intact. Yesterday we had situation in Kano Plains, and this affected the Sondu-Miriu hydropower area. And an assessment indicates that the dam is spilling. Spilling means it's not yet overflowing. Also, the Takwe Dam, it has 15 meters to fill, and from the experts, it might not fill during this season. So it still has some space to fill. And we're also monitoring the 178 dams that have been classified high to high or very high risk. And so we have our eyes on all these dams. So following the weather forecast, there were already counties that were having issues. The ones you're seeing in blue are the counties that are coming up. We're looking at Nyandarua, mainly landslides, mudslides, Mandera, because of the rains in the Ethiopian highlands, the Dawa River, Wajir, we saw Baringo because of the lakes, and the danger for Baringo is of the three water bodies that are almost interlinked. Lake Bogoria might spill over the saline water to the other two water bodies, and so that's also an area of concern. If by any chance it overspills, then we'll have that issue of the salinity spilling over to the other water bodies. Embu, same case for mudslides. Elgeyo Marakwet, same. Kajiado, low-lying area prone to floods. And recently Kisumu, same, low-lying area prone to floods. Further complicated by the backflow of the Lake Victoria. The lake is full now, and so the waters are actually coming or reclaiming its earlier course. The counties in black are what we initially had, and I'm happy to report that the situation is contained as at now. The only areas we are looking at are Maimahiu, where we are still on recovery of bodies. We're also looking at Garissa, where the floods are still ongoing, although it's on and off. They sometimes go up, sometimes go down. But we have teams on the ground that ensure that any water-going vessels are safe, and all the passengers are also safe. And as at yesterday, they actually did almost 3,000 persons going back and forth, Garissa and Tana River. So this is information we have, and so that's the impact we are looking at. And generally what we are doing or what we are planning is to support those families that are affected as well as those displaced, the injured and the missing. We have efforts in place to ensure that we return the loved ones to their families, and also the injured get the medical attention they require. To note the schools, quite a number. We have 1,967 of them. They are affected in various ways. Some are roof blown off, some are submerged, some have the ablution facilities mixing with the flood waters. And these, if you look across the country, we have 40 counties that are affected in various levels. On agriculture, that is the acreage that is swept away, and that is livestock that is lost. If we value this, it comes to roughly up to 25 million worth of destroyed livelihoods. Pictorially, sir, that is what we are facing. Those are the floods, Kawasukari, Mbagathi, Kitengela, and the Muranga landslides. That is a Kamulu Joska. We had a rescue team, rescue people. That is a Maimahio in pictorials, and the recovery process is ongoing. As of today, they managed to recover 2 more bodies. And so in a nutshell, that is in handful, that's what we have been able to do, our status of intervention. Basically, what we have been prioritizing is the saving of lives. And so we've been doing rescue, casevac, air rescue, boat rescue, and generally ensuring that no life is further lost. And so we've been to Maimahio, Oldonyo Sabuk, Kamulu, Kabai in Machakos, Narok, Homa Bay, Tana River, and most recently we are in Nyando. So before I conclude, I request the team to put up, having looked at those counties and how they have been affected. We're not just saying those are the countries, the counties that have been affected, but the level of response that each county requires differs. For example, level 1 to 2, that can be handled by the respective county emergency teams. But from level 3 to 4, that requires our concerted effort to respond to these issues. And that brings us to the counties that I've outlined. So that in order of priority, generally, as I said, first and foremost, we ensure that the life of the citizens is secured. And then what follows is the feeding, and that is what we see as what is required. And so, sir, that is the end of my presentation, and I stand to be guided, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Another round of applause to NDOC and the Kenya Red Cross. I think they've really painted the real picture of what we are dealing with as a country. We are having deaths. As of this morning, there are 229, but remember we have over 70 people who are still unaccounted for. And of course, the rain continues. And one interesting aspect of this flooding is that for the first time we are seeing serious displacement within Nairobi County. This morning we were actually with His Excellency the President in one of the most affected areas in Mathare. And in totality, if you look at Nairobi alone, over about 40,000 households have been directly affected. These are people who have to move away from what they've called home. And when you think about it in terms of even the needs in terms of food, medication, housing, it's massive. And then add to what is happening elsewhere across the country, it shows how dire the situation is. In terms of infrastructure, there are places that are no longer accessible. And today, because of the amount of rains that we've received, any small precipitation means that certain roads become completely impassable. So as we move on in terms of how best to intervene, there is definitely what the team has indicated is possible to sort within the mechanisms that exist at the counties, but then there is that which is cross-cutting, which must involve input from all of us. Your Excellency, allow me to invite my PS colleague, PS Kelo Hasama, to briefly highlight what, as the State Department or as a Ministry of ESC, Asala and Regional Development, they've been able to do to support, particularly with the supplies, both food and non-food items, and how the situation looks like. Karibu PS.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like to report that when we were here last time, we were asked to map out areas which require relief food and the interventions we are going to make. And so far, since the flooding problem started, Your Excellency, we have supplied food to 20 counties, namely Busia, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Nakuru, Nairobi, Kajiado, Machakos, Muranga, Garissa, Tana River, Mandera, Marsabit, Isiolo, Narok, Makueni, Nyandarua, Kiambu, and Kilifi. Those are the counties we have supported. Your Excellency, we are also looking at another 14 counties which will require relief food, but not as much as the ones I've just read. Pockets of those 14 counties will require relief food. We have seen interventions from non-government non-state actors like Red Cross, individual donors, organizations, visiting camps or displaced people to give support to people who have been affected by flood. My request here is that this support from non-government actors should be coordinated, because what we have seen is that some of the camps are receiving more support than they require because of proximity to major towns, proximity to organizations, and accessibility. And therefore, because all these camps and displaced people will require equal support, this kind of non-government intervention has to be coordinated so that we harmonize that kind of support. However, Your Excellency, while we have adequately provided the counties I've mentioned with food, for now, we will seriously require non-food items, because this has been missing from my budget. And although I have appealed to Treasury so that I will be given something to buy non-food items like mattresses, blankets, household items like, plates, jikos, sanitary pads, and these others, we need agencies who are interested in supporting to focus more in that area, because many of the people who are living in camps have been unable to access these materials, like blankets and mattresses. Those are urgently and critically required at the moment, and actually very, very urgently. So I think that is my brief report. Your Excellency, as we look at the future, we need to look at the midterm problem ahead of us. Some of the interruptions or disruption of livelihood we are seeing is going to cost us a lot of money again to sustain these people for another 3 to 4 months. Already, we have 1.2 million Kenyans in 23 ASAL counties who have been relying on relief food because of the perennial drought we experienced recently. So, and because of this problem of drought, we are looking at another 300,000 people who are likely to live on government or non-governmental relief supplies for another 3 months to come, even 4 months to come. So that is all from me, Your Excellency, from the State Department of ASAL. Thank you.
Thank you, P.S. Kello. Excellency, we now want to hear from the Council of Governors, and we have a number of counties represented here. I'm seeing a number of friends. There is a governor for Kajiado, and is coming up. Of course, let me acknowledge the presence of the governor for Nakuru, Makueni, Lamu, Garissa, and Laikipia, as well as the DG for Nairobi County. Karibu, Your Excellency.
Asante. Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, colleague governors, CSS, members of the diplomatic corps, partners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, I speak on behalf of the Council of Governors just to share a common position that we face. And first of all is to thank you for convening this meeting. When you convened this meeting, we were also relieved because of the pain we experienced on the ground with the communities. And therefore, we are very grateful that you have convened this meeting. Your Excellency, you're aware that the county's emergencies, kitties, are a drop in the ocean in the face of the monumental problems a number of our counties are going through. And as a result, we are literally unable to cope as counties with the problems at hand occasioned by the torrential rains. So we want to bring to your attention, to the attention of the country and the attention of the partners, that the situation is deteriorating very, very fast, and so these meetings come very, very handy. As already indicated by the technical teams, we have the figures of the people affected, and we want to say the numbers are increasing by the day. And we have the very big problem of infrastructure having been destroyed. Many communities in the far-flung areas have had their roads washed away, their bridges washed away. And therefore, we are getting to a situation where the need for helicopters or plane services will be required, as happened the other day when Red Cross and Kajiado County government had to take drugs and food to the people who are completely cut off in Magadi. And that is just an example of one of the areas where now ordinary relief services can no longer get to the people by road. Your Excellency, it is important for us to refer to what we did during the drought emergency, where we set up county coordinating teams, sub-county coordinating teams, all the way to the location. We want to appeal to you and to the partners that really that will be the infrastructure, that will be the system to use to be able to reach everybody, because as indicated by the PS Agriculture, there may be some people who have been able to raise their voices and are seen and are visible. But there are many other communities that have not been reached. But the county systems, from the county team led by the governor and the county commissioner, to the sub-county, to the locations, to the villages, can literally reach everybody. We want now to call upon you, Your Excellency, that really resources must quickly get to those committees. Because unless the resources get to those committees, we will continue to have many, many underserved people who probably their voices are unable to get here. And therefore, ours as the Council of Governors is to say, We have gone out of our way. Our small kitties have run out. The communities are crying to us. And therefore, they are waiting for the outcome of this meeting because we had told them, tunaenda kwa baba, and that may sound a government and our partners are the people we are looking as counties now to be able to serve the people. It is actually an exceptional situation to see the situation in Nairobi and the metropolitan areas. These are areas in Kajiado, in Machakos, and Kiambu, of course, and in the heart of the city who are not ordinary, who have ordinarily not been having these situations, and who are the most affected. And yet that is where huge numbers are. There are very, very many people in the metropolitan areas that have now been displaced. But I want to reiterate that the destruction of the infrastructure is occasioning new problems where even relief food is not able to get to where the people are affected. And therefore, we have now to deal with that as we project the fact that a number of farms and foods that were in the chambers were washed away. And that is going to occasion bigger problems going forward. But we are sure you are convening us together today will address the immediate emergency, but also work a roadmap to mitigate the effects of this very serious climate change disaster. Asante sana, Your Excellency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. Maybe in a minute, I would want to invite the Governor for Garissa just to make a comment, particularly with regards to building on what the Governor for Kajiado has spoken to, and knowing that Garissa lies already, there is a lot that is going on.
Your Excellency, our colleagues, governors, all present, let me take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you very much, Your Excellency, for convening this very, very important gathering. You have always been at the forefront to help Kenyans in matters of this nature, unfortunately. But Your Excellency, we were with you recently in Garissa when you actually came about a few days back, and we were together. And we told you, hopefully a time will come soon when we will invite you to Garissa for better activities. I know yourself, Dr. Stephen, next to you there, and many others here, have visited my county 3 times. Twice for flood disasters, and 1 time all the way to the interior of my county or relating to the drought. Hopefully, Your Excellency, we'll invite you soon for better things like marriages or other better activities to celebrate with us better days. Having said that, Your Excellency, this is a very, very important gathering, and I'm sure under your guidance we'll come out with great recommendations from this very important gathering. Your Excellency, all that could have been said regarding the situation in Garissa, and for that matter, Tana River has been said, but I think what I want to add to is the fact that with the current situation, Garissa, for instance, we are having huge water crisis problem. We are unable to serve water to the town because of the flow of the river, and for that matter, the turbidity of the river. We are unable to supply really water that can be of the type that is fit for human consumption. And therefore, our worry is indeed the kind of waterborne diseases that can come up from there. But more important, Your Excellency, also is the fact that with the road cut off for the last now almost 2 weeks, what we are facing is a huge food crisis. Food crisis, not only for Garissa, but for the entire northern Kenya, Your Excellency. And I'm sure you know yourself very well what that means, including also fuel crisis for that matter. I think what I would want to say is that, again, with the livelihoods lost in a big way, for instance, all our farms in Garissa are gone, and many, many livestock, a large number of livestock also has been destroyed in the circumstances. What I therefore appeal Your Excellency, is the thinking around how do we start delivering food to Garissa and to the other parts of northern Kenya through other means such as maybe helicopters or carriers, air carriers, and so forth and so on. Obviously, as a county, we are doing all that is possible to be done, and Your Excellency, we briefed you, Garissa, what we were able to do, and we're doing all our best. But I think things like, for instance, drugs now, a large number of our hospitals and facilities will soon be out of drugs, and even if we have the drugs in Nairobi here, we may need support in terms of delivering them. On the other side, we also want to make use of the opportunity of the rains to get seeds now, to plant whatever we can plant, so that if hopefully, we are able to grow, and then after the rains, we should get support also with seeds. We are doing what we can in our small way, but we also need support from the national government in terms of seeds to start growing for food security. That's my input, Your Excellency. Once again, thank you very much for your continuous and constant support to our counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Now, we move to our development partners, and I think it will be good to acknowledge all the ambassadors and the representatives who are here. Over 20 of them. I can see the governor for Nakuru. Please, so that we balance the gender. And also, I know Nakuru is among the counties that are worst hit by the ongoing floods. Please come.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, and let me also adopt all the protocols. Just say, P.S., this one is not a gender one. But let me also say that Governor Lenku and our governor from Garissa has said a lot as far as the interventions that the counties are carrying on, and also the need for collaboration with the national government. For me, as I sit here as the governor of Nakuru County, I'm a bit overwhelmed because, as was earlier said, we have a lot of dead bodies as we speak, or dead people as we speak, whose communities have nothing, so they can't even bury their dead. So those are some of the very immediate needs that and I'm talking about lots, because so far, I think as of yesterday, we had about 60. Now we have, I think, 2 more from today. We have about another almost 30 that are missing. So it's really a disaster. And in addition to that, because it wasn't a dam in our case, it was more of those gullies that were filled with water. We still have similar ones, and we still have a lot of rain. So we are still having to move lots of people. Like I think on Saturday night, we moved close to 800 households into schools and churches and everywhere. So it's truly a huge humanitarian disaster. So for me, I think I didn't want to put it more specific to a county because we're talking about generally across all our counties. But I think I really appeal for specific help, especially on this case. And I thank you, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, because you've come out there. We've been with you actually on the very first day. But ours is a bit urgent because as I stand here, I believe we have about 60 funerals on Thursday. So in addition to that, like my colleague said, we have infrastructure now. That will be the next need there. We have roads that have been completely washed away, areas that are completely cut off from other areas. Water that we had been piped is no longer usable. Like just basic food is an issue. Like we talked about clothing. And so as a county, we are doing the best we can. We are helping with the medical bills, even in the private hospitals, helping them together with what our deputy president brought to us in terms of food and all that, helping with that. We have, as a county, we have moved the families that were willing to get into rental houses. We've paid for them for the next 3 months because we didn't want to just put everybody in the camps to avoid cholera and all that sort of stuff, you know, the outbreaks that also seem to be an upcoming issue soon. We have kids, lots of kids with pneumonia because of the cold weather. So it just goes on and on. And for me, I just wanted to appeal to you from Nakuru County, how urgent, how much we need you, so that as we get out of here, let's also not have too much red tape. Let us be able to step up together, pulling together as we've always done, so that we can especially handle the very quick and urgent needs that we have out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And I think for the people of Mai Mahiu, we are not out of the woods yet, because even as of today, there's a gully from Kijabe that is filling up and it's getting soaked. We are working with the teams there, the KDF and NYS, to try and see how best to deal with it. Yes. So we have in the House over 20 countries and agencies, international agencies represented. We have France, we have Japan, we have Germany, there's World Food Program, the UN, Portugal, who have joined virtually, World Bank, same virtually. We have the Netherlands, we have Sweden, Turkey, UNICEF, India, Hungary, the United States, Denmark, IOM, IMF, UAE, Hungary, Korea, we have UNDP, we have Romania, Sweden, and the Netherlands, amongst many others who did not make it, but who are part of this engagement and interaction. And on behalf of all of them, I want to invite the UN Resident Coordinator, and probably then you will see to it on who else needs to speak, so that then I don't breach protocol. Thank you.
Mheshimiwa Naibu Rais, Waheshimiwa Mabalozi Marafiki Hamjambo. It's my honor to make this short presentation on behalf of the 90 partners who come together, 9 UN agencies, funds and programs, Kenya Red Cross, and another 80 international and national NGOs who come together within this humanitarian country team and who have been responding already to this terrible emergency. Good. Before I begin, let me just renew, Excellency, on behalf of the Secretary General and on my own behalf, and I'm sure on behalf of all of the partners in the room, our condolences to Kenya's government, her people, and particularly to the families of, as of today, 229 Kenyans who've lost their lives, but as we know, and as PS, my brother, has reminded us, quite a number more still missing, so we expect the death toll, very sadly, to rise. Sir, you brought us together in this tent back in September to talk about El Nino and to get ready. And I really want to thank you for that leadership back then. We were already very active as the 90 partners during the first phase of the flooding, back before the end of 2023, when we had nearly 600,000 people affected. And it's hard to believe that we're dealing with a second phase already with getting on for 300,000 people affected again. And as a number of speakers have reminded us, all of that building on 3 years of drought, and with every possibility that we may be back into drought later in this year. So the climate emergency is exacting a terrible price from Kenya, a country that didn't create the climate emergency. This graphic here, sir, shows you the 8 emergency hubs where all of us in this 90-strong response come together. And again, I think we've learnt the lesson of history to be ready and prepared. And so these hubs, since the start of the crisis again in March, have already been responding. Yes. So 2 quick slides. I won't go through in exhaustive detail, but on the response so far. So shelter and non-food, nearly 65,000 people reached already. Hygiene promotion, nearly 15,000 people. Water, sanitation and health, nearly 120,000 people in Garissa, Tana River, Wajir, Mandera, Lamu, and we've pre-positioned stock for another 160,000 people. And I think cholera has already been mentioned. We do know that there has been a small outbreak already in the northern part of the country, and we're very active in that space, and it's something that I will come back to. Cash transfers and food distribution, about 45,000 people reached, 4,200 cartons of ready-to-use therapeutic feeding for malnourished children in 9 counties. Logistics, and this was mentioned a little bit earlier. I'm delighted that we've been able to requisition the 6x6. These are these heavy-duty trucks that can get through flood waters. So we've been able to requisition those again and to lend mobile storage units from WFP to Kenya Red Cross. The refugee response, 12,000 additional people helped with shelter and non-food items. We're very, very worried about the inundation of the refugee camps, sir. That's coming on top of the fact that the food ration is being cut to just 40% of what is needed already for the refugees in the camps. On education, and that's also a need that's been highlighted, so we've pre-positioned 800 education kits, 18 sets of high-performance tent and flooring materials, so that we can really schools reopen that are going to have trouble doing so because of the floodwaters, or because those schools have been being used to house the displaced. Health, there's quite a bit of detail here, and I can promise the partners in the Roman government that we'll share this presentation afterwards with all of the detail. The health kits for cholera control. I think PS Mary Muthoni and my brother, the WHO representative, have been working on this very closely together. Mosquito-treated nets, because we need to be worried about the spread of malaria, and much, much more. Child protection, dignity kits, and sanitary pads for kids. I mean, it's, you know, one need compounded on top of another in a crisis of this kind, and worrying about, as always in a crisis, the potential violence, and so 60,000 dignity kits distributed there, and underwear and other supplies for 20 young Kenyans. Sir, just to go then quickly on to the need, because we're proud to have been able to reach as many as we have already. But because of your leadership, we knew that this was coming. So already in March, the international and national partners, we got together, we did our scenario planning. 600,000 people were affected in the last round of flooding. We took 400,000 as a reasonable estimate. And goodness me, we're not that far away from that now. We're close to 300,000 already in this phase. For 400,000 people, we then looked at what the stocks were that we had available. And they'd been significantly depleted by the response in October, November, December. And so on the right-hand side of this slide, sir, you basically see in blue supply, and in yellow-orange, you see what we figured we would need for 400,000 people. So we knew we had a shortfall. So, as you've directed, we've been trying to mobilize more support with humanitarian partners, but I don't want to tell you that it's been easy. Humanitarian needs globally, as you know, are higher than they've ever been in the world. We have had some small success, and so this is the announcement that I want to make today. So, and actually I'm happy to say that even today, that number on this slide has grown a little bit more. We've been able to mobilize about $7 million US. That's about 900 million shillings, I think, in today's money, of new money for the response through the generosity of our donors. So first of all, about $3 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund. That's that global kitty that the UN manages. And I want to really thank the partners. They're listed on the right-hand side, the top 10 who really contribute to that fund globally. Thank you, all of you who are in the room from those countries that contribute to SURF. IOM has been able to mobilize another $1 million towards shelter and non-food items and multi-purpose cash assistance. UNDP, about $600,000 to early recovery. UNICEF, I think this number, cumulatively, Shaheen, you were telling me, I think it's grown even in the course of today to about $1 million of new money and reprioritized money overall. And UNHCR, Caroline, about $600,000. So cumulatively, sir, as I said, about $7 million that we can announce today in new money, or about 900 million shillings, if I have done my maths right. And we're very grateful to all of the partners that have helped us do that. But that's the total that is still required. It's another $18.8 million, give or take. And it's broken down under these different headings here. I won't go through it all exhaustively, but you can see a very large sum still needed for food security, food and cash, an equally large amount of money needed for water, sanitation and health, particularly because of the cholera risk, and so on and so forth. So, and maybe I will also just highlight, I mean, the logistics number right now is relatively low, but in the previous phase of this flooding, you'll remember that we were forced to bring in helicopters. The governor of Garissa has already talked about the fact that major roads are cut and communities are cut off. The 6x6 trucks will help with that. If we have to go back to using helicopters, if it gets worse, it gets more expensive again. This is the same information, just for those of you who'd like to snap a quick shot of it, sector by sector and dollar by dollar, how much we still need. I think you all know, I needn't dwell on this, but the flood's impact on our other operations. Urban flooding, PS, you've highlighted that as a particular problem. We didn't have that to a large extent in the previous round of flooding, so that is new, and as you've said, makes the operations very, very complicated. We do expect the heavy rainfall to continue, at least until May. The Met have already told us that, and there is even the possibility it could go longer than that. I do finally want to highlight the impact on the education sector. I think we're very, very concerned about that, and we need to work on creative ways of getting kids into schools, even if they can't get into schools, if you follow me. Then beyond the emergency, sir, and this has also been mentioned, we do need to be thinking about this already. I know that you are. Infrastructure rehabilitation, that's everything from the roads to facilitate the movement of goods and services to the essential facilities, clinics and schools that have been destroyed, latrines in schools, latrines in refugee camps and displaced camps that have been destroyed and then have also contaminated watercourses. We need to be thinking about alternative evacuation centres for next time so that we don't overwhelm the education system. We need to be thinking about investing in improved urban drainage and in water capture. I know that's something that you've been thinking about a lot, sir. What an irony. We had 3 years of drought. What we could have done with this water then, if we could have captured it in water pans, in small dams, and the like. And so that brings me perhaps to my final point, sir, which is that right now in Parliament we have a draft National Disaster Risk Reduction Bill that is intended to overhaul Kenya's national disaster management architecture. That's a critical opportunity to get this right and to build for future generations. So I think all of us need to be working with Parliament and parliamentarians to make sure that that bill comes out in the way that it needs to, and we're here to help with that too. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Steve, on behalf of our development partners. Now I have the private sector, and on behalf of the private sector, I would want to invite the CEO for Safaricom PLC, Then it'll be followed by KEPSA, then the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, and finally Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Karibu.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Deputy President, I want to say all protocols observed. I'm here both as mainly as the chair of the National Drought Steering Committee. You'd wonder why I'm actually here. It is interesting that we were having a lot of support at the time because we didn't have enough water. Now we're having to deal with too much, but also as a key part of the private sector group. So, Your Excellency, the National Committee for Drought Response, which is actually represented by a number of trustees. We had 15 trustees at the time we were formed in November 2022. We worked very hard. In fact, there's quite a number of trustees. I don't want them to stand for the benefit of time. We worked very hard and actually very well for almost a year plus. Provided water, food. We restored boreholes. We rehabilitated boreholes. We also supported the Kenya Wildlife Service because also wildlife were affected. We impacted 1 million people, about just over 200,000 households, and also rehabilitated with the support of the KDF 100 boreholes. We worked with both the national but also the county institutions, especially at county, especially the work at county level, and I think was mentioned by. Learned a lot. In particular, we worked with NDMA, we worked with KDF, I've mentioned, Red Cross, Kenya Wildlife, and other partners. We put lots of structures in place to mobilize funding and to mobilize resource, to govern how that resource is being used, but also to manage the actual operations in terms of the logistics, the supply chain elements, which many of us in private sector have our own structures, but these kind of elements require coordination. We also started to think about impact on sustainability, in particular working with local communities and how we coordinate all that. And I think there's a lot of learnings between the work that we did and on the drought steering committee and the flood crisis that we are facing, with respect leveraging the framework that allows broad private sector participation. We believe this requires a much broader private sector participation because it will be dealt with over a much shorter period because the need is primarily emergency period rather than long need. Of course, there's quite a lot of work to be done on the sustainability side. But also, it is to complement what government is doing, which has already been explained, but also what development partners are doing. So you'll hear, of course, from the KEPSA, from CAM. Media, we found, is very, very important to create awareness. And we had a representative of Media Association on our board. So bringing the broader private sector who actually benefit when Kenyans do well, and therefore should receive pressure is very, very important. The other element why it is important also to sustain what we started is because, as has been mentioned, this in another few months could turn into a drought situation. So we need to think much further forward. As in my capacity as the CEO of Safaricom, we also have 2 foundations, and we already, when this whole thing started, like many other corporates and foundations, we are already starting to get involved, and we've already started to learn a lot, working in particular with the Red Cross. Some of the big learnings, awareness, creating awareness. We are sending text messages, pre-warning, early warning support. We are working with the Communication Authority to ensure that those messages actually, they reach the people affected. So media awareness is really, really important. I think the support in terms of food and medical supplies and shelter has already been mentioned, but we also, because we have foundations, we've also seen that having mobile clinics can make a very, very, very big difference, given the impact that that is having. And then also anticipating when schools open, that there will be a lot of issues with respect to the state of schools that, as was mentioned, I was seeing almost 2,000 schools, and schools have not opened. And you can imagine, especially the washrooms, is an area that we need to think through. And therefore, my ask, Your Excellency, as was requested, is to coordinate all the elements, because we felt there was a lot of duplication when we started our work, to ensure that it's coherent, is prioritized to the areas that require it most, but also that the resources can be used a lot more, a lot better, because I think the government work can continue, the development partner work can continue, but all the private sector work, the non-governmental work, needs to be coordinated in a much more coherent way. So thank you, Your Excellency. We are there. We are here to support. We've learned a lot. We can use the infrastructures that we have, but we wait for your guidance in order for us to move forward. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Chair of the National Committee on Drought Response and the CEO for Safaricom PLC. Let me invite the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Madam Gloria, if you are in the room.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President of this country, and all protocols observed, I come here on behalf of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. I'm the ED for the KEPSA Foundation. And Your Excellency, since our last meeting in this room, we went back as the Kenya Private Sector Alliance and we called in all our members. We asked them to start contributing, and on the onset, they started bringing in what they could. I can report that since then, in the last 7 days, we have distributed about 3,000 bales to Kibera, 1,300 to Mukuru, 1,100 to Githurai, and tomorrow we are going to distribute 1,200 to Mathare. Our private sector members have also donated another six trucks of food, that a quarter of it has been done in Nairobi and it shall be going outside the county. We have also received green grams, about 300 kgs as at today, and 20 boxes of milk that we shall distribute. We have dignity packs, an amount that we are going to purchase dignity packs that are going to accompany what we shall be distributing in Mathare. And we have another Kenya shillings 300,000 that has been contributed for medicines that shall go to Mai Mahiu. And on this, Your Excellency, I will also report that one of our private sector actors area, and also Team Package. Team Package has donated about 6,300 mattresses, 16,000 blankets, 16,000 cups and plates, and 4,000 relief hampers. And as we speak, the private sector is continuing to respond to that. Just maybe a dot in the ocean. They are responding well, and we shall continue working with your office to ensure that we make a difference to the people of Kenya. I thank you.
Thank you, Kepsa. Your Excellency, we are almost coming to the end. Before we invite you to then speak to us, allow me to invite the CS Treasury, Professor Ndungu, in a few minutes, now that we already receiving quite a good number of donations, whether from the private sector, development partners, but I know that the national government and the county governments are also looking up to you to speak to us and also support us in this ongoing exercise.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Deputy President, President, and Excellencies, ambassadors. I wasn't so sure that I would speak after the whole morning of total debate on the same issues. But let me say that I'm very impressed by the contributions that have come through. And I do believe that, of course, we have been asking ourselves, why is it that we have met 3 times? And each and every time, it's a different type of disaster. The drought was quite extensive. Of course, we promised El Nino, but it was very extensive. But we were ready for El Nino, which was a little bit less than what we anticipated, but it has now been overcompensated by that. You can imagine it has been quite devastating. When we met last week, I asked Kyrie was saying, and was telling the county governors and also other colleagues in the ministries that we have to start, or maybe we have to have some permanency, and that is something that I have heard in terms of how we deal with the disasters, because this unpredictability is becoming actually like like our stay. And most of the time we don't have the resources. That's why last time we met, I said that our first line of defense is actually to make sure that we reallocate resources we have, both at the national level and county level. The second line of defense is actually to look at what resources we can appropriate from the exchequer, and also what the counties can do. And the third line of defense is actually getting support from the private sector and our development partners. And you can see that it is materializing. We do believe that is the way forward. But I also did say, we have seen floods twice, and so it means that, just like my friend Stephen was saying, we should map out where the waterways are so that we avoid them in future, but also map out where the roads are, because we can harvest that water and create dams, and we are going to change the profile of our agricultural sector. But that material day, actually, most people didn't even smile at it. Moro. Why? Because they were all looking at, just like we had a media briefing, they were all looking at what specific actions. Don't tell us about tomorrow, but we know the urgency, so we can understand that. From our side, from the Treasury side, we had provided a budget of 3.85 billion. And that had some components. We wanted to make sure that whenever we distribute this kind of budget, which is for emergency, we wanted to make sure that we also go into specific areas that require those funds. The ASA, our ministry that deals with humanitarian relief, was allocated 2 billion. The roads and even Ministry of Interior, because of the work they play,
roads were allocated 500 million, interior was allocated 300 million, and then because of the support we get from NYS and other public works, 250 million, public health 100 million, and public works because of the footbridges, especially in major towns, 50 million. That is not even adequate. So we have to actually start looking at ways in which we can help each other. That is why this support is very, very important. We felt that, for example, most of those monies have been allocated, have taken up, have been operating, have been used in so many of the operations. We do believe that it's actually inadequate, but you never can tell what is adequate because this problem continues increasing with different dimensions. We never anticipated that we could have landslides and or the kind of event that we saw in Mai Mahiu. We didn't anticipate that. We could anticipate that the dams can actually overflow, but usually the event like the one we saw in Mai Mahiu is a spectacular thing. You know, for us Christians, we may ask, what have we done? Maybe we need to go back to the books and start redrawing what we need to do. But I think I echo something that I also said before when we met with the IBEC this morning. What Stephen has said is that we need now to make sure that we have a registration of the disaster management, and so that we have specific pillars instead of calling and reorganizing groups and all that, and then after that we forget the disaster and we go back to our ways, because what I've started by saying, we identify the waterways, so it means that nobody should construct that in the waterways. We identify the roads, especially those that are in rangelands, because we can turn the whole plateau into a good agricultural zone, but more importantly, we can also harvest the water. So we need to push, and that is something that I put as a proposal today, something that we are working on, to registrate a permanent disaster management unit that will be observing some to be done. And they continue also monitoring some of the advantages we can take from such excesses of nature, because we have to accept that we'll be here with this unpredictability. I realize the drought, and everybody complained, and we all were frightened, but we thought the stage has closed, but it hasn't closed. It's actually starting up. So I do believe that the National Treasury, with the available resources we can put up, and we can try to emerge from different corners, we are going to help. But at the same time, we will need to focus on the future in terms of what we can do, and create some permanency in terms of solutions. We can, and I remember the last time I talked about this, I said, let's make sure that no crisis passes without taking advantage of it. And that is one way to take advantage of it. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Waziri. Your Excellency, allow me to invite the CS for Interior and National Administration to make a few remarks, and thereafter invite you to speak to us. Karibu, Waziri.
Excellency, the Deputy President, or Excellencies and all protocols observed. I'd like to say first, I'm grateful to the solidarity that the country finds itself in. And I think this current disaster, as much as it has caused us a lot of damage, has also helped us to reflect on how, when we get together as a nation, we can resolve some of our most difficult problems. Your Excellency, from the Ministry of Interior perspective, we continue to provide the coordination work of all national government functions at the counties, and we are working very closely with the county governments. And maybe this is a good position for me to really applaud the seamless partnerships that we have between the two levels of government. I am grateful to the international partners, the UN family, and individual countries, friends of Kenya, for the very invaluable input. Humanitarian organizations, the Kenya Red Cross and others, we really appreciate also what we've been able to do. The work being done at the National Disaster Operations Center is commendable. And again, government agencies, different ministries at the national level working together and being able to communicate to the public on disaster preparedness, mitigation, and response. Very grateful to our Met people. They have kept us well informed. And I think the support and the input of everybody is what has made the pain a little more bearable. We have lost 229 people. And I want to request that while each one of us have their space to communicate to communities and sensitize communities on the nature of what we are dealing with, we should be very careful with the figures relating to loss of life, because it's a legal issue. And I would like us to, all of us, check with the National Police Service, because if somebody is dead, then we must be able to account for where that body is. If somebody is missing, that's a different matter. So please let's not announce figures until we check with the National Disaster Operations Center, where the National Police Service is represented. Your Excellency, I'm grateful to the people of Kenya for taking the security alerts positively. The last few days, we have been evacuating residents who are very close in terms of settlements to 178 water dams, water reservoirs, and other water infrastructure that we believe could cause us damage to human life. I am today a proud Kenyan to note that in many of those cases, we have not had to use force. The communities themselves are cooperating with our field officers, and what they're asking for is just support to get settled to the nearest school, to the nearest place, and of course get supported with the essentials of life. We have, as my PS for internal security did say here, we have confronted with a new thing, and that is the urban flooding, especially for Nairobi, where we've lost quite a number of people. And just this afternoon, earlier this afternoon, the president did visit parts of the affected areas. We have 40,500 households whom we have had to move. A total of 181,000 people in 40,500 households. Again, unlike in the past, most of those households have moved voluntarily. And we have not, in fact, they are not even keen to go back, even if most of their structures were carried by water. Even the ones where the structures remain are not keen to go back. And this afternoon, the president has already announced some of the measures we want to take to make sure that that category also of urban displaced is taken well care of in terms of supplies, and some kind of sustainable resettlement arrangements, which the president has already announced. So I'm very grateful to what we are having. It will actually help us to sustain the problem of urban flooding going forward, because much of that corridor in the next 5-6 days, all the 3 Nairobi rivers and their tributaries will be completely not only evacuated, but the riparian corridor, which is 30 meters, will be reclaimed. So we are reclaiming it, we are fencing it off, we are planting trees and making it like a recreation place for the public, but will not be allowing any more settlements. And we will deal with what to do with those who have been displaced from that space. And once more, those affected are cooperating. I also want to say that the security agencies, law enforcement, and multi-agency disaster response teams have been instructed to act humanely and to respect fundamental rights and freedoms as they deal with populations whom they are assisting. And we don't have much complaints from members of the public. And again, I want to thank our security agencies, law enforcement officials, and disaster response teams for handling the response while respecting the fundamental rights and freedoms of our people, and also their entitlement to dignity. Finally, as some of those who spoke here said, some of the partners and friends and representatives of other groups that spoke here, and going particularly with what the Met people are telling us, we may still have to deal with more complications for a while. So I think we need to upscale our preparedness. For us, we, at the Ministry of Interior, we have made available 3 aircrafts, that is 2 caravans and 1 Mi-17, which is a personnel carrier, which we believe will be essential in dropping food to the affected families. The only challenge is that these carriers don't carry too much tonnage, but it's better. So for the most needed cases, we shall be able to support from the Ministry of Interior. We are talking to our brothers in the Defense Department also to support us with their equipment and air assets. But we have those 2 caravans and 1 Mi-17, plus we have hired 3 civilian helicopters. So we have 6 aircrafts, which we want to make available for the most needed cases. For the most needed cases. Finally, Your Excellency, last night we had, as you're aware, the last 2 days, we were anticipating the cyclone to hit the Kenyan coast and the Tanzanian coast, and it did hit the Tanzanian coast, perhaps in a more depressed, thankfully manner, because I saw some people trying to say, oh, we thought it would be worse. And I am wondering why we should pray that danger is actualized. Again, I am very happy as the Interior Minister for seeing the cooperation of our people, especially along the beaches, the fisher folk, the people who engage in swimming, leisure, and also sea transport in the territorial waters of Kenya. And I want to thank the county governments of Lamu, Kilifi, Kwale, Mombasa, because they helped us to sensitize communities, and by and large our people stayed out during the most critical moment. I think now the issue is technically, according to the experts, not likely to present any further risks. And in fact, Your Excellency, our friends, our friends in Tanzania. We have last night rescued 21 of their fisher folk who did not take the warning seriously. I think some fishermen from Pemba, 2 civilian boats were drifted unintentionally by the cyclone from Pemba, and 1 boat ended up in Kipini unintentionally. And the other one was taken to Ngomeni in Kwale unintentionally. Luckily, and because the tide was quite strong, because they didn't take the warning seriously, the cyclone found them doing their fishing. There's a reason why I'm giving this last night incident, Your Excellency, because the people, a total of 23 sailors, were thrown out of the vessels in the process. But our Coast Guard, the Kenya Coast Guard Service and the Kenya Maritime Authority have been able to rescue all of them except 2 who succumbed because they were able to float and look for help. And therefore, I'm very grateful to what the Kenyan agencies are doing for the country and to even to support our neighbors. So I'm very grateful. The culture of taking security alerts, weather alerts, public safety alerts seriously is very important. We are just left with just within the, the estates and the villages where people are still crossing rivers when they should not be doing so. And again, that is sensitization that we continue doing so that we treat this thing much better. Otherwise, we hope that we will not have much loss of life. We hope we will not have much damage to property. And the matter that is happening in Kijabe area, I think we are seized of that matter, and it's quite delicate, but we want to avoid a situation where we can have a repeat, because what happened in my Hemayo is already too heavy, and I can feel the weight that could be on the shoulders of my sister, the governor of Nakuru, and the other friends from that place. Once more, Your Excellency, thank you, private sector, thank you, development partners, thank you, county governments, and thank you, national government agencies. The coordination, the unity of purpose is extremely commendable. And I think that's what should be encouraged. I have not seen agencies competing or trying to take credit unnecessarily. And once more, thank you very much, including the Red Cross and other humanitarian partners. Asanteni sana, we have a toll-free emergency number at the NDOC, which I think we should help us, especially the county government, to publicize to as many people as possible so that we can save situations before they get out of hand. With those many remarks, it is now my pleasure to invite the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, to come and address us. Thank you, Your Excellency. You're welcome.
Thank you. Please be seated. Excellency Governors present, our Cabinet Secretary is present, Principal Secretary is present, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, the CEOs of state corporations, the private sector, non-state actor representatives, our development partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Last week, His Excellency President William Ruto made a call to Kenyans to start together and join hands in overcoming what is destined to become one of the most devastating environmental challenges to be experienced in our country. As was noted, the continued torrential rains have led to instances of road closures and the loss of lives and property across the country. The severe weather conditions have impacted over 227,000 people, caused 228 fatalities, injured 164 people, displaced 42,526 households, and damaged infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and waterways. Permit me to request us to rise to our feet and observe a minute's silence in honor and in remembrance of the many landslides and other calamities occasioned by the harsh rainfall. Thank you. You may take your seats. In their memory, we have come together to commit to joining His Excellency, the President's call to action to continue being our brothers' keepers. Like in all previous times of challenge and crisis, the Kenyan spirit of compassion and fortitude in times of adversity has always come through, embodying the true meaning of Harambee. Despite the overwhelming impact of recent events and the pain and agony of families who have lost loved ones, homes, and livelihoods, we have observed that our humanity and the natural desire to extend a hand of generosity to our brothers and sisters has not been diminished. I therefore thank our first responders who have been on the ground, undertaking search and rescue services, providing food and other humanitarian support, tracing and uniting families, and most importantly, offering psychosocial support across affected areas. I also thank you for heeding to our call today and joining us in framing an even more elaborate structure of aid to families and communities whose lives have been turned upside down by the calamities of the last few weeks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the government of Kenya has made significant strides in mitigating the impacts of the flooding and other disaster actions across the country. Since our last engagement, we have made efforts to mitigate loss of lives, especially around dams and swollen river basins. The opening of schools has been deferred until further notice, and humanitarian and other assistance has been accorded on priority basis to particular affected sites across the country. Road closures to facilitate infrastructure repair to bridges, roads, and railways have been given priority. Our disciplined forces have been deployed across the country to back up the first responder teams and clear roads and waterways. However, even with the extensive government-led programs at both national and county level, we appreciate the need to receive and coordinate additional support for greater effectiveness. In this regard, we are calling on our development partners, the private sector, non-state actors, and individual well-wishers to contribute in cash and in kind to the noble efforts to support those most affected by the floods, landslides, and other related challenges. Last week, the National Disaster Response Steering Committee technical team identified and categorized the most urgent areas requiring expedited support. These include food assistance to affected families, non-food items, water treatment to mitigate the risk of waterborne disease outbreak, emergency housing solutions, essential medical commodities, and repair of critical infrastructure. We see an opportunity to jointly coordinate extended support to these areas through a joint-up action involving government, development partners, the private sector, non-state actors, and individual well-wishers. This whole of society approach will allow us to respond rapidly and strategically to where the needs are greatest, allow the greatest level of flexibility to deliver timely and effective coordinated assistance to the most vulnerable families and facilitate a more impactful outcome of chosen interventions. In this regard, we invite the use of the following architecture. 1, development partners with existing financial support arrangements with the government of Kenya and who are in a position to make requisite program changes to support flood mitigation efforts are to engage through the National Treasury with due information to the National Disaster Operational Center Secretariat on the toll-free emergency contact, which is 0800-721-571, and the International Development Partnership Coordination Unit in the Office of the Deputy President for information and coordination purposes. 2, all other private sector and individual well-wishers wishing to make cash donations may liaise with the National Drought Response Team led by Mr. Peter Ndegwa, the Chief Executive Officer of Safaricom Limited, whose membership and mandate has now been expanded to support the flood mitigation actions, and will gazette that expansion of mandate and renewal of their term tomorrow. Number 3, the drought response team has an existing infrastructure in aid in coordinating private sector and individual well-wisher cash donations. The private sector and well-wishers are therefore invited to send cash donations to the National Drought Mitigation Appeal Fund, and we shall be releasing the account details, one in foreign currency, the other one in Kenya shillings. Number 4, any development partner, private sector, and individual well-wishers with in-kind donations, including food and non-food items, care packages, medical packs, are invited to deliver them to the National Disaster Operations Center at Nyayo House, Nairobi, and also available on toll-free emergency contact 0800-721-571. The same will be centrally warehoused at designated Kenya Defence Forces and National Youth Service and the Kenya Red Cross warehouses for subsequent distribution through established partnerships in a coordinated manner. Where the private sector individual well-wishers intend to undertake distribution directly to the victims on the ground, they are to communicate the information on the nature, quantity, and quality of in-kind support intended to be distributed, the intended area, site of support, intended date of distribution, and intended number of recipient households or persons to the National Disaster Operations Center Secretariat for Information and Coordination. The purpose of that is to cure what is happening today. Many people who want to help are going to one destination, and what is happening now, Mathare, because of proximity, is the destination of choice. And it's a good thing, but we are giving supplies to one area and oversaturating the support to the detriment of other areas. So it will be appropriate, all those who want to help, if they liaise with our secretariat at Nyayo House so that we coordinate. And we can also marshal resources together for equitable distribution across the country. The National Disaster Operations Center team shall guide such individuals and private sector organizations on the ongoing on-the-ground security arrangements, local national government administration liaison, and appropriate dates for distribution in order to ensure good order, security, and fair and equitable distribution across the various victim sites. Where a private sector organization or individual wishes to channel support directly to a county government, they are to similarly provide information on the nature, quantity, and quality of in-kind support intended to be distributed, the intended area or site of support, the intended date of distribution, the intended number of recipient households and persons to the National Disaster Operations Center Secretariat for information and guidance. Distribution of in-kind support should only be undertaken with the presence and coordination of the relevant county commissioners or their designated representatives. Donations received will be recorded and published on the National Disaster Operations Center and the Ministry of Interior and National Administration websites and updated on a weekly basis. The Office of the Auditor General will be tasked to ensure not only the accountability and transparency of fund utilization, but also assurance of the integrity of adopted processes of food and non-food distribution actions. A comprehensive report will be provided on the use of donations received upon the final audit. The Inspector General of Police and the National Government Administrative Officers are directed to secure enforcement of this protocol and further communicate to the National Disaster Operations Center Secretariat details and information to interested local community actors in coordinating distribution efforts. We invite all donors and well-wishers and sponsors to adopt this approach so as to secure the coordination, consolidation, demarcation, and distribution of donations to vulnerable populations across the country based on the needs map already developed in a transparent and accountable manner, while also making a visible impact to the communities. To facilitate the allocation of emergency funds to support the disaster mitigation actions as anticipated in the Public Finance Management Act, whereas the minimum requirement is for an allocation not exceeding 2% of the total government revenue as shown in audited financial statements for the previous financial year. We call on counties to dig even deeper and facilitate any additional amounts necessary to save the lives and livelihoods of our people. As of this morning, we have directed the National Treasury to give priority while disbursing funds to those counties that are very affected, and that is already being done. In conclusion, I thank all Kenyans and other actors of goodwill for their prayers, support, and sponsorship already offered. We invite any other additional facilitation that may be available to be channeled through the above structure in a manner that will deliver effective and impactful support. I reiterate the message of His Excellency, the President William Ruto, during his address last week, that in the face of daunting challenges, immense threats, and unprecedented hazards, our nation has never failed. I'm confident that we shall live up to the true spirit of Harambee and to the restoration of the dignity to those most affected. Asanteni sana. Let me say that I want to appreciate all of you for the support. Since I came to office, we have had 3 major challenges, and the team here and others have really supported my office. I don't take it for granted. I want to say thank you. The challenge we are facing today is heavy. We are not able to sleep. Calls are coming from across the country. It's asking for food and non-food items. People asking for military choppers to assist in dropping food. People asking for support. Parents are very unsure of what will happen to their children. The children are at home. We have no date of when the schools will reopen, so it's a difficult time, but I want to thank the people of Kenya for their understanding, cooperation, and support. I agree with the governor of Garissa. I've been to Garissa 3 times in difficult circumstances. I'm looking forward to come for a wedding ceremony soon. And when all this is behind us, and I think it will be behind us, I want to thank CS Interior, the PS Internal Security for the support. And we have seen a lot of coordination, and there is a lot of efficiency in the activities that are going on. We'll ask the team that works with the PS Omolo to remain behind with the PS National Treasury so that we can agree on a few things on the funds available, on how to apply those funds, and then we can agree on how to move forward. Dr. Stephen Jackson, we have agreed that there is some support that will be coming. We'll be able to make an announcement along the way. And I've also requested him to advise me on how he wants us to coordinate more appeal to our development partners, because the support is not as heavy as we would have wanted. We'll continue appealing to them so that they can continue supporting us. Governor Susan Kehika, we know you have a huge challenge on Thursday, so you may want to hang around also so that we can see how the national government can support you. Already you have done a lot of work as county government of Nakuru, and that's what I'm asking the governors to do. Within the available resources, these resources are for the benefit of the people that you lead. In difficult times, you have the latitude to apply the resources to ensure that the people you govern stay alive and they are assisted. So I want to ask our governors, within their limited resources, to consider that extraordinary times call for extraordinary interventions. And we must allow flexibility in difficult times. And I think the people that you govern will understand. The controller of budget will understand. The Auditor General will understand, because these are difficult times. We are in this situation at a time of scarce resources, but we'll mobilize the resources available to deal with this disaster, because that is what we must do. Lives are most important. All other things can wait and can follow. We all work for the people of Kenya to be happy. They can only be happy when they are alive. We need to save lives. We need to make sure that our people feel we are doing the right thing by making the right intervention. So I want to thank the private sector. We'll agree so that we can renew the mandate of that team. We can expand it. We can gazette as early as tomorrow so that you work within a legal framework and you start mobilizing whatever resources that are available. I want to say thank you very much. And we'll be meeting until the situation is well contained. It's always good when we exchange ideas, when we meet together to do an audit of what is happening and agree on the next steps of intervention. And I want to thank you for always coming when we call you, and we'll continue to do so. I want to say thank you very much. Asanteni sana. Finally, let me acknowledge support from the United Arab Emirates. They have given us 40 metric tons of food supplies, another 34 metric tons of non-food supplies, a total of 74 metric tons at JKIA. So that it can help our people. I want to say, Ambassador to the UAE, thank you very much, and we appreciate the support. Thank you very much, Balozi.
Your Excellency, sir, just to request you to remain on stage as we invite the diplomatic corps for a photo session. And members of the diplomatic corps, our ambassadors, our chargé d'affaires, our high commissioners, all members, persons,